Welcome back to Dawn of Man HP. The town of Inception is in the year 39 in spring, and we are facing another raider attack. I believe this is our third. They're coming from somewhere over in this direction. And it's an opportunity to see how, when you have defenses up, defending is different. So we're just going to go and put everybody on alert here. And they're running around. Now if we notice the watchtower here, we have people going into the watchtower to try to help defend. The other thing is that if we look over in this direction, we have people assembling at this gate. And why this gate? Because there's a gate over here, and a gate over here, and yeah, we've still got this one over here. They are not gathering at those places, and that's because this is the closest gate to where they're attacking from. So we're going to gather up a bunch of them. We're just going to sort of sit over on this hill by the whoops. Nope, we're not going to gather sticks. We're going to sit over on this hill by the watchtower and see how this transpires. And here they come. There's only 3 of them this time. It's been 3 to 5 has been our numbers so far. Stay over here. So they keep wanting to go back. And the watchtower opens fire. They shoot at the watchtower, and then we ambush them from the side. And the nice thing about this is, you know, we don't lose people nearly as well this way, because they just shoot at the watchtower. We get some more knowledge out of it. Now the watchtower takes damage, and we've got to repair it. But compared to losing people, that's essentially nothing. So now we go back, normal behavior. Let's get back to work and continue with the process of growing the town. In the summer, the demographics turn our attention once again to a matter of dealing with end-of-life issues. We've got another person coming out here to haul away this particular megalith. Notice that we actually have flint blocking the wall here, so I've got them working on that as their next place to extract. We'll eventually be able to close that up, hopefully. We've got one man here up here. This is the first one we built over here. And the third one is going to go right up here on this end of the camp. And you can see we're almost there, but not quite on finishing off these tents. So, looking up at our burial area, we have, not hardly any room in there. That one's about half. This one less than half. So we've had some elderly die recently, and the population is definitely starting to grow again despite that. 8 pregnancies out of our 14 adult women. And so it looks like we could possibly end up with a strain here if we don't stay ahead of it. It's a good time to initiate our next megalith opportunity. Funerary dolmen. And these can come in slightly different shapes as well. But they're going to fit right in here. I'm going to make it fit right in here, I should say. Somewhere around there. I'm going to build up one of those, and this will take 3. So in order to make that happen, we have to venture out, and I'm going to come over into this general direction. And just grab these 3. They actually are some slightly closer. But you can start to see here already that as you build these sort of structures, you have to venture out further and further, and the work becomes more and more. We'll begin that process, despite our fairly high workload as it is. Which of our fields at harvest time is not like the others? Well, these are looking rather pathetic, especially if you compare them. They're much more withered to healthy grain, seen there in the wild. And that's because our barley crop got hit by disease. It wiped out most of the barley, but it did not touch the einkorn and emmer, so diversification winning out here and giving us still most of our harvest to be available. And then it's time to do another upgrade. We're going to unlock pulse domestication. And of course the planting process works just like the grain. You just select a different crop and slap down whatever field you may wish to choose. Work continues on the walls, whether or no permitting, as we are pushing down this way, and then we're going to come out this way. But yes, we are low on warm clothing, and lumber is the biggest issue. So we have no logs available. We're working on cutting down trees further down in this area, both to create room and meet that supply. And now begins the harvesting of pulses that I've laid down a couple fields for. Lentils here, peas here. And we now have a year-round farming cycle as this trader goes off, having received nothing from us once again. We plant pulses in the winter, and then in the spring we plant the grain, then we harvest in the summer here, and in the fall here, and then the cycle begins. So there is no time of year in which farming is completely relieved. Now on the other hand, we're working on getting this last wonderful, speed this up as much as we can, getting this last megalith over to the site, because we already have 2 over here ready to get that dolmen built. Let's see if anybody else is going to come over here and work on that. We have 2 people at it now. That'll speed things up a bit. Looking around elsewhere, we've got a gate now over here, so did expand that a little bit. We're still working on this, but that should be gone soon. There we go, we got 3 of them over here. One of them is real thirsty, but they are now making their way to get this built. And we were just about there, and a couple of them gave up. We got this last one. They have an old woman doing it, Aran. There we go. Now we're going to get that into place. And then we are going to see how this comes together. We've essentially got ourselves a large mound of dirt. We've got these leaning up against it. They're managing to break them up and move them into position. Only one person working on this at the moment. Now all of a sudden it looks like they have a lot more rocks than we started with. That's interesting. And now we have this flat piece on top. Looks like they're getting everything in position. Essentially what they're building here is a tripod. And there it is, +2 knowledge. So if we look at this, it gives us 20 prestige to build one of these. 5, by the way, for the men here. So these are really beneficial when it comes to that. And then you can bury up to 10. So we have 3 of these at 3 capacity each. We just increased our capacity for dead bodies by building just one of those. I could just start recycling these right away, but it seems more thematic and narratively fitting that we would wait for the bodies to decompose, in other words, until they're no longer useful, before we get rid of these. But this is definitely a big upgrade for us in terms of our funerary options. As Inception wraps up its 4th decade of existence, we have completed the wall over here, and we've got this big wedge. We're clearing out a bunch of lumber here. I have upped our axe production, which is letting this go faster. That was really sort of overdue. And then on this direction, we have cleared out the flint. There's going to be another gate here, and then we've got a couple more trees to clear down this way to allow us to build the rest of this. But the palisade is close to completion. We also have completed our conversion to thatched construction, so there are no more skinned buildings around. And our need for animals is much reduced at this stage. Partly due to the increased population, we are getting the workload a little bit more under control, and that's also partly because we're finishing up some big projects that I'd sort of overextended us on. I have built another crafter over here to try to keep up with supplies. And we actually need to hunt a little bit more than I would prefer to, even though I want to keep the food supply diversified, and we've only got a little bit of meat there. Because the situation is we need leather. And we need bones for the crafter, and so there's a certain amount of it we still need to do, and we're not raising enough animals nearly yet to make up for that. So that's sort of the last bit of transition, but you look at the town, it's looking solidly agricultural. We have mostly made the change. Now we're not quite keeping up on the food supply with our reduced hunting, so I'm expanding our agriculture. I've got another field here, although part of where you'd like to place it, the hill's too steep there, but expanded that way, more einkorn. And then we've got now bitter vetch, peas, and lentils, so a third field over here of pulses. Next thing would probably be to expand more grain, but I'm just gradually trying to scale up that effort. And you see our population up to 66. Still plenty of room with 88, and then a few pregnancies. And welfare has been holding okay, but we are not as happy as we used to be still. Just the workload has really taken a toll on everybody. So the next step, defensively wise, we've finished the palisade. Both sides. It's all complete. And this is a platform, which is our next set of things that we want to build. I also have one over here. And then down this way, there are only a few points across the river where you can cross without swimming. This being the only one that's between our two walls. So I built 3 watchtowers here as our guard in that place. Temporarily, I'd like to expand over to this side, possibly eventually. And then if I do that, maybe I'll enclose this. That would be even better. But for now, that's what we have. So we have plenty of wood at the moment. I want to try to get a couple of these platforms in place over here as well. There they go. You just kind of put them up against the wall and it will just sort of connect there. So it's 2 logs and 4 of the sticks in order to get one of these up. There we go. And placing them on an angled spot isn't bad at all either. They managed to adjust the poles there. So let's get that rolling. Everybody bring the equipment over here that we're going to need for that. The supplies. And meanwhile, everybody rushes around. You can see the tree clearing operation over here is almost complete. So we're going to have to expand out and gather more from the outside eventually. There we go. And we have destroyed our sledge. So we'll need another one of those. But we can pop in here and take a look at the building process. Basically, we're just sticking the poles up out of the ground. And now they're working on the other one over there as well. These days, when we try to get something done, we generally have plenty of labor to do it, as long as I don't overstretch things. Because now that the palisade's up, we're totally fine with that. And they're laying flat pieces across the top. Now, one thing that they don't really show here is how do you get up on these things? There we go, it's finished. But they're just sort of sitting there. There's no ladder or anything. Of course, if you look at the watchtowers, there's a ladder up underneath them. But we don't have anything like that with the platforms. So apparently they use the magic of levitation or something. Taking a bit of a look at our expanded farming area, and it's expanded because look at our food supply. It is falling quickly over the past couple of years, and we need to do something about that or very bad things will happen. So I've added in some of the areas that I'd taken down in terms of gathering, berries and fruit from trees and things of that nature. And I've also added in a couple slightly larger fields. We've got, I think, barley here, and then I've got some emmer over there. And so you just need to really throw more into acquiring especially more grain and get this going back in the right direction. Also do a little bit of extra hunting going forward. I just need to make sure this, at the very least, levels off and hopefully starts going back up so we don't have starvation issues. One thing I did neglect to mention at the time that I did it is the latest upgrade has been sheep domestication. If we pop in here, got that. And the same basically as the goats. You go out and you capture them, and then they produce wool, which is useful in building fabrics. Right now I'm just sort of waiting. I think they're going to grab this one. Yep. So then now they're being sheared, and the wool operates the same as the milk does on the goats. It gradually builds up to 100%. Both male and female goats, though, manage that. We're currently hunting some wolves. And we can't actually use the wool for anything now. You see we've got a few of it built up. But that's going to be the subject of our next investment. Also, what I've done in addition to that, I built another hearth, and I've got some more of these mortars. We had the one over here, we've got this one over here. We now have a total of 3 hearths and 3 mortars. I think, yeah, there's the third hearth. Just so that we can properly get the grain turned into bread and flour in between, of course, once we do get the harvesting done on the fields, which it's coming in nicely, just got to wait a little bit longer. It's harvest time, and we have people coming over here to tear into these fields, and I definitely want to keep them focused on that. I want to come into this with pretty strong morale. We're not doing great, it's passable, but not any better. And I definitely don't want to have a whole bunch of other work going on. I don't have a bunch of hunting happening at the moment. I'm not having them build a bunch of things. I just want them to focus on this. If I had waited even one more year, we would have started to see a downward spiral, because morale tanks, people start dying of starvation, then they won't work as quickly, then they can't clear the fields in the fall. So if you're relying heavily on farming, you really need to come into the fall season ready to dedicate people to that and have them be as productive as possible. We do have enough knowledge now for another upgrade. We're going to wait just a bit until we get some more of this cleared out and we start to see the workload dive further. About 50 grain now. Okay, now it's really going down. So we're going to slow things a bit. And we are going to grab weaving. And that allows us to build a couple of new buildings and have a new production chain begin to set up. So I'm going to move that down here by the river by this storage hut. And we are going to get a weaver where we can make cloth. Initially, it will just be out of the wool that we've been gathering. And an outfitter. Outfitter will take what the weaver produces and make it into actual viable clothes. So we'll just need them to haul over the building materials here. We've got, animals going around, but I'm not worrying about doing any hunting. I'm focused on this project now. We can do other things later. So we've hauled over some of the items for the weaver. And there's some more wool. Excellent. There we are. Now we're ready to get this weaver built. Let's see what we've got here. Ladder by the side, and they're building the basic framework here. We still need more for the outfitter. It does require somewhat more in the way of building materials. And now they're going to get to work on that as well. Interesting little, sort of shadowish, almost burned out effect on some of their containers down there. And of course, the interwoven sticks, again, we see the same building structure pattern consistent with our thatched construction. The angled roofs also. Again, the dried mud on the sides. This one doesn't so much have those integrated sides as it's just got this elevated poles sticking up. And of course that is the loom right in there, which they're going to use to weave, and somebody's sitting down to do it right away. And we've got our outfitter here still finishing up. Lots of animals wandering by because it's turning to winter. All of our goats and sheep are heading inside to the stables. Looks like they're almost done over here. And there it is, our outfitter. Okay. So, this is going to produce wool cloth from wool. And it's a 1-to-1 relationship there. And then also flax into linen, which we cannot do yet. And then both of those can be used over here to produce finer clothes. You can see the wool outfit. You get 2 of them out of every bit of cloth. So each unit of wool will eventually produce 2. And then the linen, same deal. 2 suits of clothing out of 1 piece of cloth. So this is a slightly more complicated production process, but also you notice they get 2 points in the style category. And if we go back and look at our crafters, and we're going to stop now building the warmer skins outfits, which means the only thing that we need skins for at this point now is for bows. We're not using them for anything else, and we just go ahead and knock this down to 0. We'll not be making any more of those. But also, these have a 1 in style. So people get a little bit better morale boost. They aren't actually any better functionally, but they're more comfortable. People are going to feel better about them. It's relatively speaking, it's a little bit more luxury for us. Breeding sheep for their wool did not begin until probably about 4,000 years or so after sheep were first domesticated. Originally, they were probably raised just for their meat. Before that, sheep were probably hairier as opposed to being woolly, more similar to other mammals. And the early methods of removing the wool were probably not particularly kind to the sheep. Plucking it out by hand, pulling it out with a bronze comb, yum. It's become somewhat of a cause among animal rights activists, but it's kind of complicated. Sheep definitely do get injured in the shearing process. Someone cuts too close to their skin. But on the other hand, the way that we've bred them now puts us in a situation where if you don't shear them, that can be very hazardous to the sheep as well. A sheep was found in 2015 in Australia that could barely walk because it was carrying around 40 kilograms of wool. Had to be sedated, and literally its life was saved by the process. All of that is just an ethical consequence of the fact that we have bred them for their wool, and because everything else is, we had to make it into a competition. The World Sheep Shearing Championships is a thing. Getting the raw wool, though, is just the beginning of the process. Then it's got to be thoroughly washed and dried. Teasing and carding happens, which is the process of pulling it apart, removing dirt, plant fibers, other foreign material. And then small bits of it at a time are pulled and twisted into a yarn or string. A spindle came to be used to wrap the yarn around, and the wool fibers themselves tied loosely in place around a stick known as the distaff. Looms for weaving the yarn into cloth have gone through an extensive metamorphosis over time. They can be small and simple, they can be large and convoluted, but the basic idea is holding strands in place in one direction, usually vertically, while more yarn is woven in between horizontally, form whatever size or pattern the weaver desires to make. The townspeople of Inception have a much more streamlined process to go through, but are now set to begin upgrading their apparel. With the new professions of weaver and outfitter in place, they can now look forward to what grand new inventions might lay on the horizon. Till we get to that, thanks for watching everybody. More Dawn of Man will continue.